I don't know about, well, the rest of you, but I'm not much given to celebrating birthdays. I've always considered them a kind of holdover from the bad old prehistoric days when life was nasty and brutish and short. But with our comfy modern life and all of this evolving longevity, I've always wondered why you deserve presents for turning up. And, well, until very recently, Diana Athill, our next presenter, agreed with me. And she spent most of her life trying to avoid birthdays. But when she turned 90, she did think that that was a milestone of enough significance that it deserved to be noted. Until she was 75, she was this very famous literary editor of some of the most important names in modern literature. She edited Naipaul and Mailer and de Beauvoir and Updike and our own Mordecai Richler and Margaret Atwood. But at 75, she decided to retire, and she transformed herself into a writer and then proceeded to publish 5 memoirs that have been exceptionally successful, including her last one, which is called Somewhere Towards the End. So Diana Athill, at the age of 92, was here in Toronto last week, and with Alice Munro, she kicked off the Harbourfront International Festival of Authors. Huge acclaim. I begged, I pleaded, I asked her to stay. It would have amounted to another week in order that she could speak to you, but she couldn't. She had a pressing agenda, so I went over to her rooms at the hotel with a camera, and here's what she had to say. Diana Athill.
One of the reasons that I'm quite glad to be here is that the taboo has been lifted. So many of us have got old age ahead of us. Obviously, a good many years we're going to have to live after we stopped our jobs, and we're not going to be decrepit. So they're interested, people are interested in what's going to happen, and that is an eye-opener to me. I mean, there are ways of making oneself enjoy one's age more and do more with it. I think it's largely genetic and luck. That I come from a family where the women particularly live a long time and, thank God, hang on to their wits. So that that's a good start. We are very lucky. We are people who have things built in that we want to do, that we like doing. I mean, if you want to write, or if you want to paint, or if you want to play music, you've got something which is more important to you than anything else, and you can go on with it until the end. I think with people who have to just get by without something like that, it's much harder. Given luck, given good health, it is quite obvious now that one can live as good a life in old age as you can at any other time. You go on being the same person with slightly different outlooks about things. Some of which are, you have losses, you have disagreeable things that you have to deal with, things that happen to your body which are tiresome, but you have gains. You have learnt a lot. When you're young, you exist very largely in how you are seen by other people. So you're terrified of making a fool of yourself. You're terrified of being ignorant compared to somebody who knows much more than you are. And once you're old, you realize that it doesn't actually matter. You can, I think, make yourself do something very important, which is live as much in the present moment as you possibly can, which I think it's always important. I think you always should be able to live fully in the moment, but it gets more important as you're older, because the temptation is either to dwell nostalgically on the past and make it seem better than it really was, which is a waste of time. And I'm all for enjoying memory of the past, but not for sort of Those, not too much of that, those were the days stuff, because the days weren't really very much better. They were worse in many ways. And to dwell on the future in the long term, I think, is actually depressing. So I would urge people who are my age and more to make a sort of mental discipline of concentrating on what's going on in front of their eyes, particularly the pleasures. Particularly the pleasures. I still have this feeling that there's a rhythm in life. Things begin, they develop, they grow, they come to an end. And this happens on a scale in every possible way, even mountains, even things like, I mean, for instance, I was in Scotland the other day, and they're the most wonderful, wonderful mountains which hardly show. They've been worn right down. These are mountains which used to tower up. They've been worn down to little things like that. Even mountains have an end to their lives. And I think this is how life works. It starts, it builds, it comes to an end. Something new starts, builds, comes to an end. And I don't see any objection to that pattern. I mean, I would certainly, if I knew that the world was going to be maintainable, confined, I would be much happier, because I would think the new generation, I wouldn't have to worry about it. They would be having a good time. But I don't want to see the end of that wave, that up and down thing, which I think is how life is. I do my own marketing, I do my own driving. I still drive a car, thank God. I'm very bad at walking, you see, so if I didn't drive a car, I would be stuck. Yes. Mobility is important. And I caught myself out just the other day when I was driving with Sarah in Toronto, and I saw someone trundling along on a dear little electric thing, and I said to Sarah, who was driving me, I'm going to have one of those when I'm old. I love clothes, and I still watch fashion, not because I myself am going to wear these very fashionable garments, but it just sort of directs you. Wanting to be attractive for oneself, really. One's not exactly imagining anybody saying, oh, look at her, but one just wants to put on a good show. Yeah. I live alone, and I am in fact thinking, well, I'm sure, that I'm going to have to change my circumstances, because I live alone, and therefore I depend greatly on friends and dear nephews. I haven't got children. And if I'm ill or something, they have to rally round. And it has struck me in the last 2 years that one must not expect that too much of people. And so I am going to move my circumstances. I'm going to move into what is called, I think it describes itself as a retirement home for the active elderly. Because there will be available, if necessary, there will be available care. But at the same time, it's a very, very pleasant place, and one lives one's normal life for the rest, unless care is needed. When does old begin? I would say, as things are now, that really after I turned 80, I began to think, yes, I can't call myself middle-aged anymore. I'm quite prepared to think that I may only live for another 2 or 3 years. It doesn't worry me, as long as those 2 or 3 years are good, you know. Looking back on the shortness of life as it was before, it is interesting. It is interesting to think that of how easily we have been able to lengthen it to the extent that we have. So why not go further? But I still feel hesitant about it.
Well, as you can see, a perfectly delightful woman, and so lucid, so clear about her own mind on things. I so wish that she could have been here. She did too, and maybe we'll get her back at another time.